They said the forest was cursed, and anyone who heard the tree cry would never return the same. Adeze heard it anyway. They said the forest did not kill with teeth or claws. It killed with sorrow. It changed people slowly, the way night changes color in the sky. They said some who entered came back breathing, but empty. Their eyes saw, but their minds were lost. Others returned mute, unable to speak of what they heard. And many more were never seen again, swallowed by the trees and forgotten by time. That evening, as the sun bled into the red dust of the village, a young maiden walked alone toward the edge of the land, her back bent under a load of firewood, her heart heavier than the burden she carried. She did not know that before the night ended, she would hear a tree weep like a living thing, or that the voice trapped inside that tree was a forest spirit bound by ancient laws, sacrificed by the ancient fathers. She was only a girl nobody loved, the stepdaughter, beaten, starved, and silenced. But destiny had been waiting for her, rooted deep in the forest, crying, calling her name. And when she turned to run, fate refused to let her go. If you love African folktales like this, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and join our storytelling family for more magical tales. But once, Adeze had been loved. Before sorrow learned her name, her world was small and warm. It was the sound of her mother's voice at dawn, singing softly as she stirred the fire. It was the smell of boiled yam and palm oil. It was laughter that filled the house like light. Her mother's name was Amma. Amma's hands were gentle, but they were never weak. She worked like other women in the village, yet she always found time to sit with Adeze beneath the mango tree, brushing her hair and telling her stories. Stories of women who endured. Stories of spirits who watched quietly. Stories that ended with hope, even when the road was hard. Listen well, my daughter, Amma would say, tapping Adeze's chest lightly. Kindness is strength, but never let suffering erase who you are. Adeze believed her. She believed everything her mother said. Her father, Okari, was a quiet man even then. He loved his wife and child, but his love was the silent kind. He spoke little, worked much, and avoided conflict like a man avoiding fire. Amma understood him. She often spoke for him, defended him, softened his silences. Their home was not rich, but it was full. Then sickness came. It came quietly, like a shadow at first. Amma grew tired. Her songs shortened. Her laughter faded. The healer came and went, shaking his head more each time. Adeze sat beside her mother's mat every night, holding her hand, begging the spirits she had only heard about in stories. One morning, Amma did not wake. The village mourned. Drums were beaten. Women cried. Adeze cried until her chest hurt and her voice disappeared. When the burial ended and the crowd thinned, the house felt empty in a way Adeze could not explain. Even the walls seemed to listen in silence. Okari did not know how to fill that silence. Days passed, then weeks. Adeze learned to cook alone, to fetch water alone, to sleep with memories as her only comfort. Her father watched her struggle, his eyes heavy, but he said nothing. He did not know how to speak where Amma once stood. It was the elders who advised him to remarry. A man cannot raise a daughter alone. Okari listened. He always listened. He rarely questioned. That was how Mbik came into Adeze's life. She arrived with her two daughters, Nkiru and Amara, and with her came a coldness that no one noticed at first. At the beginning, Mbik smiled often. She called Adeze my child. She touched her head gently when others were watching. But kindness that needs an audience does not last. Adeze felt the change before she understood it. Meals grew smaller. Instructions grew harsher. Her mistakes were remembered, while the stepsister's laziness was ignored. Nkiru and Amara slept while Adeze worked. They laughed while she bent under chores too heavy for her age. Her father saw. Many nights, Adeze caught him watching her from the doorway, his face filled with something like regret. Once, she thought he would speak. Once, she believed he would protect her. But silence won. And so, little by little, the girl who had once known love began to learn suffering. Beyond the village, the forest waited. Not yet with open arms, not yet with whispers, but patient, ancient, listening. And Adeze, though she did not know it, was already walking toward a destiny shaped by loss, silence, and a love the world had denied her. At first, the village spoke well of Mbik. She greeted elders with deep bows and sweet words. She laughed loudly in public and called Adeze my daughter whenever ears were listening. Women nodded in approval and told Okari he had chosen wisely. Even Adeze wanted to believe it. She wanted the warmth she had lost to return, even if it came wearing a different face. But cruelty does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it enters softly and removes things one by one. The first thing Beak took was rest. Adeze was the first to rise and the last to sleep. Before the cock crowed, she swept the compound, fetched water from the stream, and prepared the morning fire. While Nkiru and Amara slept on woven mats, Adeze worked until her arms ached and her back burned. When she moved too slowly, Beak's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Are you lazy like your mother?" she would ask, smiling thinly. Adeze swallowed her tears. Her mother's name was sacred to her. She learned quickly that silence was safer than protest. Food came next. At first, Adeze noticed she was given smaller portions. Then she noticed she was served last. Some nights, when the pot was nearly empty, Beak would sigh loudly and say, "A child who works too much forgets to eat." Nkiru and Amara never missed a meal. They watched Adeze closely, learning how power worked in the house. When Adeze was blamed, they smiled. When she was punished, they pretended not to see. They were not cruel like their mother, but they were not kind either. They had learned that doing nothing was enough. Okari noticed everything. He noticed the hunger in Adeze's eyes. He noticed the way she flinched at Beak's voice. Sometimes, when he returned from the farm, he saw Adeze struggling with chores meant for grown women. His mouth would open and then close again. Peace was important to him. Quiet mattered more than justice. One evening, Adeze dropped a pot while cooking. It cracked loudly against the ground. Beak's anger rose like fire. "Look at her," she shouted. "Careless. Just like the woman who gave birth to her." Before Adeze could explain, a slap landed across her face. The sound echoed through the compound. Adeze staggered but did not cry out. She lowered her head, her cheek burning, her heart breaking. Okri stood there. He shifted his weight. He cleared his throat. Then he walked away. That night, Adeze did not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when her home had become a place she feared. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere far beyond the village, the forest breathed, ancient and patient. Days turned into weeks. Beak grew bolder. Adeze was accused of stealing food she never touched. She was blamed when goats strayed. When visitors came, she was hidden away, as if she carried shame in her shadow. In the village, whispers began. "That girl is stubborn," some said. "She brings trouble," others murmured. Adeze learned that lies, once spoken often enough, grow roots. Once, an elder woman confronted Beak gently. "The girl looks thin," she said. "Is all well?" Beak laughed. "She refuses food. She is ungrateful." The elder nodded and said no more. Even cruelty is protected when silence surrounds it. Adeze's father became smaller in her eyes each day, not because he struck her, but because he did nothing. His love, once quiet, had become invisible. When Adeze looked at him now, she did not see safety. She saw a man trapped inside his own fear. One night, Adeze gathered courage. "Father," she said softly, "why does Mama Beak hate me?" Okari did not answer at once. He stared at the ground for a long time. "She does not hate you," he said finally. "She is only strict." Adeze nodded. She knew better than to argue, but something inside her cracked quietly. From that night on, she stopped asking questions. Beak noticed this and smiled. The stepmother's cruelty began to change shape. It was no longer only hunger and labor. It became humiliation. Adeze was sent on errands late at night. She was ordered to kneel for long hours as punishment for imagined wrongs. Once, Beak forced her to apologize publicly for a lie she did not tell. The village watched. The village said nothing. In the evenings, when the moon rose, Adeze sometimes remembered her mother's stories. She remembered how Amma spoke of spirits who watched silently, recording the deeds of humans. Adeze wondered if those spirits still listened. She wondered if they could hear her heart when even her father could not. Beyond the village paths, the forest stood unchanged. The elders still warned against it. Children were told never to wander near its edge. They said strange sounds came from deep within, cries that did not belong to animals, voices twisted by sorrow. Adeze listened when these stories were told. Something in her chest tightened each time. She did not know why. Beak listened too. Her eyes gleamed whenever the forest was mentioned. A seed had been planted in her mind, and it was growing. One afternoon, as Adeze scrubbed pots until her fingers bled, Beak stood over her and said quietly, "You think anyone will save you?" Adeze did not answer. "You have no mother. Your father has chosen peace. And the world does not notice girls like you." Adeze kept scrubbing. But that night, as she lay on her mat, she felt something stir inside her. Not anger, not hatred, something older, something patient. The same patience that lived in the roots of the forest. The same patience that waits for the right moment to speak. There are wounds made by hands, and there are wounds made by silence. The second ones last longer. Okari knew his house was broken. He knew it in the way Adeze moved through the compound like a shadow, careful not to be seen. He knew it in the way her laughter had disappeared, replaced by obedience so complete it frightened him. He knew it when he caught sight of her arms, thinner than they should be, her eyes too old for her face. He knew, but knowing did not make him brave. Every morning, Okari left for his farm before the sun fully rose. He told himself he was doing it to provide, to keep the household alive. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The farm was his hiding place. The silence of the fields was easier than the noise of injustice in his home. When he returned in the evenings, he found the compound clean, the food prepared, the firewood stacked. Adeze had done it all. Nkiru and Amara sat idly, gossiping or laughing. Beak ruled the house like a queen who feared no challenge. Okari watched. He always watched. Sometimes, at night, memories of Amma returned to him like accusations. He remembered how she spoke firmly when things were wrong, how she defended their daughter without raising her voice, how she never allowed fear to decide for her. "You must speak," her voice seemed to say. "You must protect what you brought into this world." But Okari feared Mbik, not because she was strong, but because she was loud. She argued, accused, twisted words until truth sounded like lies. He feared the chaos that would follow if he challenged her. He feared the shame of a broken household. He feared being alone again. And so he chose quiet. One afternoon, he returned early and heard Adeze crying behind the hut. Her sobs were muffled, as if she was ashamed of her pain. Okari's feet stopped moving. His heart pounded. This was his moment. He stepped closer. "Why are you crying?" he asked. Adeze wiped her face quickly. "Nothing, father." He saw the marks on her back. Fresh. Red. His chest burned with anger. His mouth opened. Then Beak appeared. "She is crying because she is stubborn," Beak said sharply. I corrected her. Okari looked at Adeze. She did not speak. She had learned the price of truth. "Is this true?" he asked weakly. Adeze nodded slowly. Okari nodded too. That night, he did not sleep. He turned on his mat, listening to the sounds of the house. He heard Beak's breathing. He heard the insects outside. He heard his own thoughts, loud and unforgiving. By morning, his courage had faded. Days passed. Adeze stopped expecting help. When she was beaten, she cleaned her wounds alone. When she was hungry, she drank water and waited. When she was insulted, she swallowed her pain. Her father's silence taught her the final lesson. She was alone. The village noticed her change. "She is too quiet," some said. "Silence follows suffering," others replied. Once, during a village gathering, a child tripped and spilled soup on Adeze. Beak accused her of clumsiness and ordered her to kneel in the open sun as punishment. The villagers watched. Some pitied her. None intervened. Okari sat among them. He stared at the ground. When he returned home that evening, Adeze could barely stand. Her knees were swollen. Her lips were cracked from thirst. Okari brought her water quietly and placed it beside her mat. "Drink," he said. She drank without looking at him. That hurt him more than any insult could have. In his heart, Okari tried to excuse himself. He told himself that Beak would calm down someday, that Adeze would grow stronger, that spirits rewarded patience. But patience without protection is abandonment. One night, Adeze dreamed of her mother. Amma stood beneath a tall tree, her face serious. "Why does he watch?" she asked. "Why does he allow it?" Adeze woke with tears on her face. Beyond the village, the forest listened. The elders said the forest remembered wrongs. They said it carried the voices of the forgotten. Okari had heard these stories as a boy and laughed at them. Now, they returned to him in uneasy whispers. Sometimes, when the wind blew from the forest, he felt watched. Beak grew crueler as Okari grew quieter. She tested the limits of his silence and found none. Adeze was sent on longer errands, given heavier loads, punished for smaller things. The house had learned its order, and Adeze stood at the bottom of it. One evening, As Okari sharpened his tools, Adeze passed by carrying a bundle too heavy for her. It slipped from her hands and fell. Mbik raised her arm to strike. Okari stood. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Enough, he said. The word was small, weak, late. Mbik stared at him, surprised, then laughed. So now you speak? Okari said nothing more. Mbik struck Adeze anyway. That night, Okari understood something terrible. Silence, once chosen, becomes a habit. And habits are hard to break. He had failed his daughter, not once, but every day. Cruelty grows bold when it discovers it will not be stopped. By the time the season changed, Mbik no longer hid her hatred. The house had become her kingdom, and in that kingdom, Adeze had no name, only duties. From dawn until the stars appeared, she worked. When she collapsed into sleep, it was only to rise again before rest could heal her. Nkiru and Amara did nothing. They sat in the shade, their laughter sharp and careless. When Adeze passed by carrying water or firewood, they mocked her. Sometimes they tripped her on purpose, then ran to their mother to accuse her of clumsiness. Mbik never asked questions. Each accusation was a gift. Each punishment reminded Adeze of her place. One market day, Mbik sent Adeze to carry produce to the square. The basket was heavy, cutting into her shoulders. When Adeze stumbled and spilled some palm oil, Mbik raised her voice for all to hear. "See the wicked child," she cried. "She wastes what she did not earn." Villagers gathered. Some shook their heads. Some whispered. No one defended her. Adeze knelt in the dust while her stepmother scolded her loudly. Her father stood nearby, his face tight, his hands clenched. He did not move. That day, shame entered Adeze's bones. From then on, Mbik made sure punishment was public. It pleased her to break the girl where others could see. Adeze became a lesson, a warning of what happened to children without protection. At home, the cruelty sharpened. Mbik accused Adeze of stealing coins she had hidden herself. She accused her of breaking calabashes she had smashed in anger. Each lie was spoken calmly, confidently, until it sounded like truth. Okari heard them all. Each time, he said nothing. At night, Adeze washed her clothes alone by moonlight. Her hands shook from exhaustion. The water felt cold, but she did not complain. Complaints had never saved her. She began to speak less. When spoken to, she answered softly. She learned how to make herself small, how to disappear in plain sight. The village elders noticed. "That child carries sorrow like a shadow," one old woman said. "Yes," another replied. "And sorrow does not remain silent forever." Mbik heard these whispers and smiled to herself. She had been listening too, to the stories told by elders, to the warnings about the forest. The forbidden forest. The place where no one returned unchanged. One night, she asked casually, "Is it true the trees cry there?" The room fell quiet. "Yes," someone said. "They say the forest keeps spirits older than memory." Mbik nodded slowly. A plan took root. Days later, Adeze was accused again, this time of letting goats wander into a neighbor's farm. The accusation was false. But Mbik's voice was sharp and convincing. "You will pay for this," she said. "You will learn responsibility." Okari looked at his daughter. Her eyes met his. For a moment, he saw her as she once was, a child laughing beneath a mango tree, her mother's hand in hers. He turned away. That night, Adeze lay awake listening to the wind. It carried a sound she could not explain, soft, distant, like morning. Long before Adeze was born, before her mother sang to her beneath the mango tree, before Mbik learned how silence could be used like a weapon, the forest already existed. It stood beyond the last farms and footpaths, where the soil darkened and the air grew thick. The elders said the forest was older than the village itself, older than names, older than the first drumbeat. They said it remembered everything. Children were warned never to wander near it. "The forest does not kill quickly," the elders said. "It listens first." At night, when the moon was thin and the wind restless, strange sounds sometimes drifted toward the village. Not animal cries, not human voices either. Sounds like grief pressed into breath. Sounds like a living thing trying to speak through wood and bark. They said there was a tree deep inside that forest that cried, a tree that wept like a broken being. Some claimed it was cursed. Others said it was a spirit bound to the earth by ancient laws, punished for loving humans too deeply and refusing to abandon them. No one agreed on the full truth, but everyone agreed on one thing. Those who truly heard the cry never returned the same. Adeze heard these stories the way thirsty ground hears rain. She did not ask questions. She did not laugh like the other children. She listened quietly, her heart tightening every time the elders spoke of spirits who watched suffering and waited. Sometimes, she wondered if those spirits had seen her. Beek also listened. She listened with different ears. While others heard warning, she heard opportunity. The forest became a presence in her thoughts, a tool waiting to be used, a punishment worse than beating, worse than hunger, worse than public shame. The forest did not need blood on her hands. It would do the work for her. Days passed, and Beek's cruelty sharpened further. Adeze was sent farther to fetch water. She was ordered to carry loads meant for 2 people. If she slowed, she was accused of laziness. If she stumbled, she was accused of wickedness. Each punishment was delivered calmly now, without shouting. Beek had learned that quiet cruelty cut deeper. Kiru and Amara watched everything. They had learned their roles well. They complained loudly about small inconveniences, knowing their mother would turn on Adeze. They cried false tears when Adeze brushed past them by accident. They blamed her for messes they created themselves. Adeze accepted it all in silence. Her father watched. Each evening, Okari sat outside sharpening his tools or mending nets, pretending the house behind him was not breaking his child. Sometimes, Adeze passed by him carrying a load. Their eyes met briefly. Hers searched his face for something, anything. He gave her nothing. One evening, an elder named Omalika visited the house. She was old, bent with age, her eyes sharp with years of watching human foolishness. She looked at Adeze closely and frowned. "This child is fading," she said plainly. Beek smiled. "She works too hard." Omalika turned to Okari. "And you allow it?" Okari shifted uncomfortably. "She is strong," he said. Omalika shook her head slowly. "Strength without protection becomes a curse." Beek's smile did not falter. That night, as Adeze lay on her mat, the wind rose again. Adeze pressed her hands against her ears, unsure why tears slipped down her face. The next morning, Beek announced a new rule. "Adeze will now gather firewood every evening," she said. "The village uses too much." The load was heavy. The path was long. Each day, Adeze returned later, her legs trembling, her hands blistered. The sun often dipped low by the time she returned, painting the sky red. Red like warning. Neighbors noticed. "She goes too far," one woman whispered. "Why does she not send her daughters?" another asked. Beek answered with a sharp laugh. "They are delicate." Adeze's father said nothing. As days passed, the firewood paths led closer to the forest's edge. Adeze could feel it even before she saw it. The air thickening, the sounds changing. Birds grew quieter there. The ground felt older beneath her feet. Sometimes, she thought she heard something, soft, sorrowful, like breath pressed through pain. She never spoke of it. One evening, after Adeze returned exhausted, Beek sat quietly, her eyes thoughtful. She asked, almost casually, "How far did you go today?" Adeze lowered her head. "Near the old path, Mama." Beek nodded. That night, she dreamed of trees bending, of roots wrapping around ankles, of a girl walking until she could not turn back. In the days that followed, Beek began to plant lies carefully. She accused Adeze of bringing bad luck. She claimed food spoiled when Adeze touched it. She whispered to Okari that the girl carried a restless spirit, inherited from her dead mother. Okari listened. Fear crept into his heart. One evening, Beek spoke softly to him. "If we do not correct her, worse things will come." "What correction?" he asked. Beek did not answer immediately. She looked toward the horizon, where the forest waited, dark and silent. Adeze, washing pots nearby, felt a chill run through her. That night, she dreamed again of her mother. Amma stood beneath a tall tree, her face sorrowful. "The earth listens," she said. "Do not fear the voices." Adeze woke trembling. She did not yet know that her punishment had already been chosen. The Dame Beek decided Adeze's fate did not begin with shouting. It began quietly. The morning sun rose as it always did. Roosters crowed. Women swept their compounds. Children laughed on their way to the stream. To the village, it was an ordinary day. Only Adeze felt the weight in the air, thick and pressing, like rain that refused to fall. She woke before dawn, as usual. She swept the compound. She fetched water. She cooked. She worked until her arms trembled, careful not to draw attention to herself. She had learned that peace, however false, was fragile. Beek watched her closely that morning. Her eyes followed Adese's movements, calm and measuring. She spoke softly, even kindly, and that frightened Adeze more than anger ever had. Cruelty, when it stops shouting, is often preparing something worse. By midday, a cry rose from the goat pen. Beak came running. "Thief!" she shouted. "Wicked child!" Villagers gathered quickly. Goats were valuable. Accusations spread like fire. Beak pointed at Adeze. "She loosened the rope. She wants to disgrace us." Adese's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes. She had not gone near the pen. Kiru and Amara stood behind their mother, faces carefully blank. Okari arrived late, breathless. He looked from the goats to Adeze, then to Beak. "Is this true?" he asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and familiar. Adeze looked at him, not pleading, just waiting. "She has always been careless," Beak said calmly. "And carelessness invites misfortune." The villagers murmured. Some doubted, some believed. Most simply watched. Okari swallowed. His voice came out low. "We will handle it." That was all. Beak smiled. At home, punishment was announced. "You will fetch firewood," Beak said, her voice even. "Enough to last many days." Adese's heart dropped. "From where?" she asked quietly. Beak paused, then said the words carefully, as if tasting them. "Near the forbidden forest." The compound went silent. Even Kiru and Amara looked uneasy. Everyone knew what "near the forest" meant. It was not a place for children. It was not a place for anyone. Adeze turned slowly toward her father. Okari stood still, his face pale. His hands shook slightly at his sides. "Father," she whispered. He did not answer. In that moment, something final settled between them. Adeze understood that no cry, no obedience, no patience would ever be enough. Whatever love remained in her father had been buried beneath fear. That evening, Adeze prepared herself. She tied her wrapper tightly. She gathered her rope. She lifted the basket. Beak watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Do not return empty-handed," she said. Adeze stepped out of the compound. The village path stretched before her. Each step felt like farewell. People watched her pass, some with pity, some with curiosity. No one stopped her. At the edge of the village, she paused. The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, its trees standing like watchers. The air felt different there, cooler, heavier. Adeze could feel her heartbeat in her ears. She did not enter. Not yet. She gathered fallen branches near the edge, her hands shaking. Every sound made her flinch. The wind rustled leaves, and for a moment, she thought she heard something. Low, sorrowful, like breath shaped into grief. She dropped the wood and stepped back. "No," she whispered. She returned home late, trembling, her basket half full. Beak's eyes hardened. "This is all." Adeze lowered her head. "I was afraid." Beak laughed softly. "Fear will not feed us." That night, Adeze did not sleep. She stared at the roof, listening to the forest through the distance. It felt closer now, as if it had leaned toward the village. Okari lay awake too. He heard Adeze's quiet breathing. He remembered her first steps, her laughter, Amma's voice. He turned toward the wall. In the days that followed, the punishment continued. Each evening, Adeze was sent again. Each evening, she returned with fear clinging to her skin. The paths took her closer. The trees grew taller. The sounds grew clearer. Once, she heard it distinctly. A sound like crying. She froze. It did not sound human. It did not sound animal. It sounded like sorrow without a body. Adeze dropped her basket and ran. At home, she collapsed at her father's feet. "Father," she cried, "there is something there." Okari's chest tightened. He looked at Mbik. Mbik crossed her arms. "Lies," she said. "Fear speaks through lazy mouths." Okari hesitated. Then he said the words that sealed everything. "Go tomorrow," he told Adeze. "Finish it." Adeze stared at him. In that moment, the child she had been finally disappeared. That night, the forest stirred. Roots shifted beneath the soil. Leaves trembled. The ancient spirit bound to the crying tree felt the pull grow stronger. A name echoed through bark and earth. Adeze. The forest had not chosen her. The world had pushed her into its arms. Adeze did not cry when morning came. She rose before the sun, as she always did, but something in her had settled into stillness. Fear was still there, but it had grown quiet, like a child who had cried itself tired. She swept the compound one last time. She fetched water. She prepared the fire. No one noticed the care in her movements, the way she touched things gently, as if saying farewell. Mbik watched her from the doorway. Today, she said, you will not stop at the edge. Adeze nodded. Kiru and Amara avoided her eyes. They suddenly found interest in the ground, in their fingers, in anything but the girl who carried the weight meant for her alone. Okri stood nearby. Adeze turned to him. For a moment, words rose in her chest. Questions, accusations, memories. But she said nothing. She only bowed her head slightly, the way one does before leaving a place forever. Okri felt something tear inside him, but he did not speak. Adeze lifted the basket. It was heavier than any she had carried before. Firewood pressed against her back, digging into her skin. She stepped onto the path, alone. The village faded behind her. The laughter, the voices, the sounds of life thinned until only her footsteps remained. The ground darkened beneath her feet. The air grew cooler. Birds fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. She crossed the line no one crossed. Trees rose around her, tall and ancient, their branches twisting like listening ears. Roots crawled across the ground like resting snakes. Sunlight broke through in thin, uneven strands, barely touching the forest floor. Adeze's heart pounded. Every step felt watched. She moved slowly, carefully, afraid that a wrong step might awaken something sleeping. Every step felt watched. She moved slowly, carefully, afraid that a wrong step might awaken something sleeping. The deeper she went, the heavier the air became. It smelled of earth and age and rain long forgotten. Then she heard it. A sound so soft, she almost dismissed it as imagination. A breath. She froze. The sound came again, clearer now. It was not wind. It was not leaves rubbing together. It was a low, broken sound, like sorrow pressed into bark. Adeze's knees weakened. No, she whispered. The sound rose again, longer, heavier. It was crying. Not the sharp cry of pain, but the deep weeping of something that had suffered for too long. Adeze turned to run. Her feet moved, but the ground seemed to pull at her. Roots rose where there had been none before. Branches bent, narrowing the path behind her. The forest did not chase her. It simply refused to let her leave. She fell to her knees. Please, she said, her voice trembling. I don't want trouble. The crying stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a voice spoke. A child who does not want trouble is often sent to find it. Adeze's breath caught. The voice did not come from the air. It did not come from behind her. It came from ahead. Slowly, she lifted her head. Before her stood a great tree, larger than any she had ever seen. Its trunk was wide and scarred. Its bark split and twisted as if shaped by pain. Its roots spread far and deep, disappearing into the earth like veins. From the heart of the tree, a faint glow pulsed, soft, alive. I have been waiting, the voice said. Adeze trembled. Who are you? I am the one they forgot, the voice replied. The one they bound. The one who chose to feel. The tree shuddered, and a sound like a sigh passed through its branches. I am a forest spirit, it said, older than your village, older than its fears. Adeze bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. I didn't come to disturb you, she whispered. I was sent. The forest spirit was silent for a long time. I know, it said finally. The forest hears what houses hide. Adeze's tears fell onto the roots. I was loved once, she said, her voice breaking. And then I was not. The roots beneath her hand warmed. I was bound once, the spirit said, because I loved those I was told to abandon. Adeze looked up. Why do you cry? She asked softly. Because I remember, the spirit replied. And because remembering hurts. The tree's bark shifted, opening slightly, and within it Adeze saw light, not blinding, but gentle. Within the light were images. A forest alive with laughter. A spirit walking among humans, helping them, protecting children. Elders turning away. Words spoken in fear. A binding. A punishment meant to teach obedience. They trapped me here, the spirit said, so I would stop caring. Adeze pressed her forehead against the roots. They tried to make me disappear too. The forest grew still. You are not afraid of me, the spirit observed. Adeze shook her head. I am tired of being afraid. The tree's branches trembled. That is why you heard me, the spirit said. Not everyone can. Adeze stayed there for a long time. She told the spirit everything. Her mother, her stepmother, her father's silence, the hunger, the shame. The forest listened without interruption. When she finished, the spirit spoke again. Pain does not make you small, it said. It makes you visible to those who still see. The roots lifted slightly, guiding her to her feet. I cannot leave this tree, the spirit said, but I can give. Light flowed from the bark, wrapping around Adeze like warm cloth. Her wounds eased. Her exhaustion lifted. Strength filled her limbs. Not loud strength, but steady. Return, the spirit said. Your story is not meant to end here. Adeze hesitated. Will you be alone again? The forest rustled softly. I have waited long. I can wait longer. But you? Your return will shake what thought it was safe. The roots parted. The path opened. Adeze turned once more. Thank you. The tree hummed, low and deep. Go, the forest spirit said. And remember, silence is a choice. So is truth. Adeze walked back through the forest. This time, it did not resist her. The village appeared ahead, unchanged, unaware. But Adeze was no longer the girl who had entered the forest trembling. Behind her, deep among the roots, the forest spirit listened. No one expected Adeze to return. So when the first child screamed and pointed toward the path that led from the forest, the village froze. She is coming, the child said, voice shaking. She is coming back. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Women dropped what they were doing. Men stood slowly, squinting toward the distance. From between the trees, a figure emerged, walking, steady, unhurried. It was Adeze. Alive. Whole. The basket rested on her back, filled beyond what any child should carry. Her steps were firm. Her eyes were clear. There was something about her that made the air feel tight, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Whispers spread like fire. She entered the forest. She should not be walking. Is she still human? Adeze walked through them all. Dust rose beneath her feet as she entered the compound. Beak was the first to see her clearly. The smile on her face cracked and vanished. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Okari stood behind her. When he saw Adeze, his knees weakened. Relief surged first, sharp and overwhelming. Then fear followed, cold and heavy. He felt it immediately. Something had changed. Adeze stopped in the center of the compound and lowered the basket slowly. The firewood spilled out, dry, heavy, far more than expected. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She went deep, someone whispered. Beak recovered quickly. She always did. You see, she said loudly. She was lying before. The forest did not touch her. Adeze lifted her head. For the first time in a long while, she spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. The forest did not harm me, she said. It listened. Silence fell. The elders stepped forward. Omalika's eyes narrowed as she studied Adeze closely. Child, she said slowly, tell us what you heard. Beak laughed nervously. Stories. Fear. Nothing more. Adeze did not look at her. There is a spirit bound to a tree, Adeze said. A forest spirit who cries because it remembers suffering. The wind stirred suddenly. Leaves rustled though no storm was coming. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Adeze continued. It hears children who are abandoned. It hears pain hidden behind walls. It hears silence. Her eyes moved, finally resting on her father. Okari could not look away. You sent me, Adeze said quietly. You watched. You chose peace over your child. The words were not shouted. They did not need to be. They landed like stones. The villagers murmured. Some turned to Okari. Others looked at Beak. The truth, once spoken aloud, refused to shrink back into hiding. Beak's voice rose sharply. She lies. Spirits do not speak. At that moment, the ground trembled. Not violently, just enough to be felt. A low sound rolled through the air, deep, mournful, unmistakable. A cry. It came from the direction of the forest. Women screamed. Men stumbled back. Children clung to their mothers. The elders fell to their knees. The tree, Omalika whispered. The crying tree. Adeze stood unmoving. The sound faded, but its echo remained, heavy and accusing. Beak staggered backward. This is witchcraft, she shrieked. She has cursed us. Adeze turned to her fully now. You cursed yourself, she said, when you fed on silence. When you taught your daughters to do nothing and your husband to see nothing. Kiru and Amara began to cry. The elders spoke at once. This must be judged, one said. The forest has answered, said another. Beak fell to her knees suddenly, clutching the ground. Her breath came fast and shallow. She began to laugh, then cry. then laugh again. No, she muttered. No, no, no. Her mind cracked under the weight of what she had done. By nightfall, she no longer knew where she was. The elders decreed her punishment quickly. She would be taken away from the village, sent to wander far from the land she had poisoned with cruelty. Her daughters would be returned to their mother's people to be raised under watchful eyes. As Mbik was led away, she screamed Adeze's name again and again until her voice dissolved into madness. Then all eyes turned to Okari. He stood alone in the center of the compound, smaller than anyone had ever seen him. You failed, Omalika said plainly. Not with your hands, but with your silence. Okari knelt. I was afraid, he said, tears streaming freely now. I thought keeping peace would protect us. Adeze looked at him for a long time. The forest said silence is a choice, she replied. So is truth. Okari bowed his head. The elders ruled that Adeze would no longer live under his authority. She was given land of her own, protection of the elders, and freedom to choose her path. As dawn broke the next day, Adeze walked once more toward the forest's edge. She did not enter. She stood and bowed. I heard you, she whispered. The wind answered softly. From that day on, the village changed. People spoke sooner. Elders listened longer. And when the wind carried a sound from the forest, it no longer felt like a warning, but a reminder. Adeze lived, and the forest remembered her name.